This is Elementary Greek with Foundation Baptist College, and we're continuing on in our textbook by Merkel and Plummer with Chapter 9, and we're getting to pronouns. So to establish first off what pronouns are, what they're for, how they function, I think it's worth going back to kind of the fundamental or basic analysis that we've done a couple of different times with other phenomena. And if we take our foundational analysis of language and what language does, we've used the example, I eat cheese. Now, I could be more specific and direct by just putting in the word Joel. Joel eats, I do have to go to a third person verb now. Joel eats cheese. But, it gets tiresome, of course, eventually, to keep on referring to yourself by name. Okay, so this almost could sound like a mother speaking to a child to try to oversimplify. Mom's going to give you Cheerios now. Okay, mom's going to put you to bed now. Or we could go, because I still have a pronoun in there. So mom's going to put Freddie to bed now. Does Freddie want to brush his teeth? Or does mom need to teach him to do it for, okay, this gets tiresome. And some of that is, it is because it's a tiresome, repetitive sort of thing. It is an efficiency thing that we end up using pronouns to substitute for the thing that we keep on repeating. You can get worse cases, okay? So I could say something like Foundation Baptist College exists to train future pastors. Now, do I, in the following paragraph, want to keep on saying every time? Foundation Baptist College has existed since 2009. Foundation Baptist College offers the following degree programs. Foundation Baptist College is located in Edmonton. That's, of course, tiresome. It's also just a lot of work. And so what we're going to start doing is saying it, or even we. And those substituted pronouns are, I've called them actually, as we've proceeded, I've kind of called them nominals because we're recognizing that they do the same function in the sentence. Whether I have Joel eats cheese or I eat cheese, it's performing the same role. So a pronoun just substitutes in for a noun, fulfills the same functions as a noun, and even functions grammatically the same way as a noun. It follows then, if you just reason this through for a moment, whereas in English I just have singulars and plurals, those are the only ways that I can configure nouns. And so if I have goose and geese, then I can say it and they, right? Goose, it, geese, they. But, beyond that, I don't have any other configurations. And if I do the similar pronouns with, let's say, personal pronouns, Joel, I, Joel and Fred, we. Okay, those are my only configurations, singular and plural. See, but it follows with Greek, as you've known, when you work with the nouns and you have your full configuration of all the noun endings like this, we remember then that we have a noun, not just, like this would be this chart would be 25% in English. In fact, since we don't have genders, it would be more than that. It would just be the singular and the plural. Greek explodes this out because I have gender, I have number, which English has as well, and I have case. So if English would have just given me these two, and I don't even worry about the feminine and the neuter, Greek gives me all of these, and all of those, I have the full gender configuration. Okay, so I have bad news for you. You're going to need to learn for every pronoun. You'll need to learn singular and plural forms, but also masculine, neuter, and masculine, feminine, and neuter forms. And, of course, nominative, genitive, dative, and accusative forms. And so if you're multiplying those out, then you're going to end up with 8, 16, 24 times 3, 3 different genders. So 60, what are we at? 76 forms. And you need to learn those for all of the different pronouns. That's the bad news. The good news is, you were hoping for that actually these aren't going to be hard to do at all because they're quite similar. In fact, they're basically the same as forms you've already learned. So let me go ahead and introduce for you, I'll introduce first off, I guess, the third person pronouns. And what that would look like is, here's the chart. Now, you've got, as I said, a masculine, feminine, and a neuter. And you've got, as I've said, a plural and a singular. And you've got all the configurations. But just take a look at this for a moment, okay? And can you catch the patterns? So as I'm running down it, look at it. Os, u, o, on. Hey, let's go to the masculine plural. Oi, own, ois, us. Not bad. Let's try the feminine. A, ace, a, ain, I, own, ice, os. Is seeming more doable. And let's go to the neuter. A, u, o, a, own, ois, a. In fact, it's entirely doable. All you need here is the recognition that I'm taking my standard stem. Out is the stem, alpha, upsilon, tau. And I'm just going to work through that stem to add the endings on all of the forms. Follow my standard forms, and I'll have exactly what I need. So here's what you really need in order to do the third person personal pronouns. This has the meaning of he, she, it, they, etc. All of the third persons are going to use out as their stem, alpha, upsilon, tau, and then we stick on our standard endings. Osuon, oionoisus, eis, ein, ionisis, anuoan, aun, ois, a. Only exception you have to be conscious of is this spot right here, and it's the reminder, just the recognition, this is not auton, it's auta. Otherwise, this exactly follows the endings you've already learned. Okay, so congratulations, my friends. You've already mastered the third person personal pronouns. What if I go up to the first person and second person? So by this, then I'm saying like I, me, we. First person, I'm going to have this as my chart, and it is slightly different from things you've seen before, and yet there's enough similarity, I think, that you'll catch some help. Okay, so the nominative singular is a standalone form which just has to be memorized, and it's ego. However, egotistical, or the ego, if you go the Freudian thing, you already know this word. And these sets of forms right here are going to be on the stem mu, moi, me, the mu form. So that first letter is basically your stem. I found those fairly easy to learn and remember because, well, I'm just thinking the English word me. And once I do that, then I look at the endings. Hey, os, u, o, on. This one, of course, is an exception. You just have to memorize it. But it turns out it is handy because it matches the English word, exactly the English word me. The moi is different, where I would have expected something. If I'm doing logos, I would expect log go. Okay, but you can see anyway, because you've done some stuff with the contract verbs, that the omicron lengthened to omega and the iota subscript went underneath. So actually my ending O, which I've memorized, is not unrelated. Okay, whether that helps you or not, I did for this particular chart, and this side as well, I did hard memorize these with that method I've suggested, walking down a sidewalk somewhere and just saying them 1,000 times out loud. Okay, I absolutely did. I don't think I did ego, you very well could, but I walked around going mu, moi, me, he, mes, he, mon, he, men, he, mas. And I think you should, just for ease of use and speed. Mu, moi, me, he, mes, he, mon, he, men, he, mas. Okay, over here, we've not learned these endings. These are completely new to you. You've learned oi, own, ois, us. I mean, I suppose the own matches. The other forms don't match at all. I will say, fear not. This information is not wasted because actually that set of endings, es, on, in, os, is going to reappear in a future noun chart you'll learn. So you're actually pre-learning some information for a future chart, even there, if that helps any. Okay, that's then a bit of memory, but the good news is I've moved from the first person. If I go down to the second person is not dissimilar because you've actually, once you've learned the first chart, you've actually picked up the pieces you need for this guy. Okay, here Sue has to just, I think, be flat memorized. But if you can remember, I'll put them side by side, the previous chart, mu, moi, me has just gone to su, soy, se. You just change out the first letter. Hemes, hemon, hemen, hemos has just gone to humes, humon, humin, humos. The difference then is the first letter here, mu, changed to the second, or first letter here, su. And the first letter here, hemes, changed to the first letter here, humes. By the way, I should have commented both of these do have a rough breathing mark. That's important. But if you can just remember those bits, you'll be fine. And what worked for me even to try to, because students will sometimes get themselves confused, humes versus hemes and how those work. What helped for me again is the mnemonic me in English. Well, the M takes me here, and the E, eta, takes me there. Whereas down here, I just memorized the word su, the sigma takes me there, and the upsilon takes me there. If I ever forget, and I'm trying to remember is hemes or humes, which is first person, which is second person, and that happens too. Guys struggle, people struggle with that. I also just remember that you, as in you guys, well, that's second person, and that's what this chart means, you. So humes, you. Okay, your biggest issue then with these charts is not actually memorizing the chart. It's remembering whether it's humes or hemes. That's probably your biggest issue. Turns out then that this whole massive chart, it's not that hard to work with. It's actually really easy because you've memorized most of the pieces and many of the other pieces can be memorized in just not that much time. Something that I think is helpful for just exegetical purposes is something that Plummer talks about, and that is the emphatic use of these pronouns. So here's a starting principle just to remember how Greek verbs work and how they are a bit distinct from English and how some of this goes. In English, I need to say specifically what the subject of my sentence is. Okay, so here's something I can't do in English, or at least can't do unless I'm going to be weird. I can't say eat cheese and just leave it there without specifying my subject. In fact, I would say if you heard just that sentence, eat cheese, as it stands like that, you probably took it as a command. Hey, you, eat some cheese, man. But I can't skip the subject. I need to tell you, I eat cheese, you eat cheese, they eat cheese. Bob eats cheese. Good Canadians eat cheese. I mean, I don't know. I've actually got to state what my subject is. And there's a reason for that. If I do my matrix, remember our first, second, third person matrix for verbs. Okay, let's actually do that with verbs. And I'm going to do eat. Okay, let's go through and what would be the verb forms for each of these? Well, I eat, you eat, he eats, that one's different. We eat, y'all eat, they eat. Okay, what that means then is if I was looking at a specific verb without context, without a specified subject, the only one that's distinct is this one right here, eats. The only one that stands out as unique, because all of the other ones are the same, eat. First person, second person, singular or plural. See, and my problem then is if I give you just this blank eat cheese, you don't know whether it's I, we, they, y'all, you can't know. Contrast that with the way that Greek verbs work. And we've looked at this now in two different tense frameworks, or two different tense systems. In one tense system, the present tense, actually, I guess you have three different charts, or four different charts. How about in this? O eis e amen edo usi. Every single spot is distinct. Oh, well, let's move it over. Luamai, lue, luetai, luamatha, luesta, luentai. Every form is distinct. If I go over into the imperfect, eluan, elues, elua, eluamen, elueta, eluan, I do have some ambiguity between those two forms. That's a rare instance, and it doesn't really lead to confusion. There may be a case, but I don't personally know a case in the Greek New Testament where we're not sure whether it's first person singular or third person plural. And over here, these forms are all distinct. In other words, I'm looking across here, 8 forms that we've learned, 4 charts, each 1 times 6, so 24 instances, and out of all of those, there are only 2 that are the same. And what the significance of that when it comes out into grammar working itself out is that in Greek, I can actually do something like elus, and you already know that it's a second person singular. Okay, if I give you lue, you already know that it's a second person, present, middle, passive, second person singular. If I give you luantai, then you already know that it's third plural. I just give you the verb form, just the verb form, and you already know the subject, or at least whether it's first, second, or third person. Okay, the significance of that then is that as I read the Greek the New Testament will often just leave out the subject. Like it could put a pronoun there, it could say I, whatever, but why? Once I put luo there, right? I mean, if I say that verb, apathnesko, kaleo, if I put it there, you already know that it's a first person singular. I don't need to specify any further in order to tell you the person or the number. You know that based on the verb alone. And that then becomes significant because when the New Testament does specify the subject, there's a slight bit more emphasis. So let's take a look at some of this and see what an emphatic would look like. An emphatic pronoun is when I do specify the pronoun even though I don't have to. It's kind of extra. This is a good example of it here. Let's read John 1:27. The one who comes after me, I am not worthy in order that I would loose or I should loose the strap of his sandal. Okay. Now, this eimi you've learned, and that means I am. I don't need to put in an I in terms of Greek because eimi already says I am. I already know that it's first person singular. Eimi says that. Similarly down here, worthy in order that I should loose. There is no pronoun specified here to say whether it's he, she, they, you. I don't need it. I know that it's I because luso is the only verb form in the first person, or it can only mean first person singular. Okay, so that should be clear enough. Some texts do include the word ego. And why do they do that? It's functioning as the subject of this verb, I am. Okay, second passage, John 7, verse 4. And you have a similar thing going on here. For no one is in secret is doing or is acting, and seeks himself openly, or seeks to be known openly. And in this case, he is seeking. This is the subject of the zete. Well, I don't need to have that autos there. No reason to do it. Why is it there? It's a little bit more emphatic. Down here, this is an interesting example. Some, they were saying it is he, others were saying, no, it is not. Another one, others were saying nobody's like him. But he was saying that I am. And you could say that it is I or something like that. The verb would already say that. The ego kind of gives it a little extra emphasis, a little push. Down here, And he gave some apostles, some prophets, and so forth. Well, this verb means gave, and it's clear enough by itself. The he, the autos, it's extra. He gave. Okay, now some textbooks or grammars would give you something like, well, he himself gave. That maybe says it a little bit too strong. And I wouldn't either say that this is a strong preaching point where you say, like, it's really emphasizing the he. It's light, it's a little subtle, but there are places where it's maybe contrastive, where the feel that you're getting as you go along, I say this maybe is what's happening in the John 1:27 passage. The feeling is here, I am not, like I in contrast to him, I'm not worthy. There's a little bit of a, if you were reading it out, like, I'm not worthy. Like almost that you read it a little louder maybe. A little bit of emphasis, a little bit of extra. There are two other ways that the New Testament uses the pronoun, and particularly the autos pronoun, to give a bit of extra emphasis. Okay, so let me clarify again so that we're very clear on what's going on here. We're talking about emphatic ways of using the pronouns, like giving a little bit of emphasis. And I want to recognize there's a further kind of emphasis that comes in this form right here, the autos form. This is the third person personal pronouns, he, they, and so forth. Okay, but there's a special kind of emphasis that can happen where that third personal pronoun can do something that's a little bit, it's not actually connected to the pronoun role. It's a further sort of emphasis. And this first set is going to be translated as himself. Okay, what we call this is the intensive use of autos. If you connect autos together with the rest of the sentence or with another noun, you'll get this himself kind of equation, or effect here. This verse would read, but John wore a garment of camel's hair, and so forth. Right here, he. What's going on here? You don't want to translate this, but John, he wore. It's not what you need to put into it. This is just kind of further emphasizing the John, and it's not translated in the ESV, so I think this is something that's one of those nuances that you're picking up only from Greek. But John himself, or again, you kind of could lean to it, but John, kind of the sense of John himself, John, emphasis. Similarly down here, while they were discussing, and along the way they're talking, Jesus himself came near and went with them. Okay, this, and Jesus drew near would be sufficient. What's the autos doing there? The autos adds, it's redundant, it agrees with Jesus, agrees in gender, number, and case. Okay, so it matches. Same, Jesus is masculine singular nominative. This is also masculine singular nominative. It's completely extra. And I would translate this, Jesus himself drew near. ESV has picked it up. And it is the feeling, while they're talking, you're talking about the guy, while I'm talking about the guy, that very guy walks up. That's the feel. It's a strong emphasis there, actually. Jesus did not entrust himself to anyone. And you've got the emphasis here, but Jesus, the ESV has rendered this on his part. Kind of like Jesus on the other hand, but Jesus, let's put a little bit of extra emphasis on it. Okay, I can keep on going. You can look down these other passages, but each one of these I have, Jesus himself did not baptize. As they were talking about him, Jesus himself was in their midst, and he said to them, peace be with you. Acts 1:24, Lord, you know all things. Show to us which one of these two you have chosen. There are some variants that may have this emphasis in here. Peter here, I myself am a man. This is an unusual one. It's one that maybe you don't expect to see, but I myself, it's I plus the autos, and the autos makes the ego a stronger I myself. Okay, so this is a common enough pattern that I think it's worth expecting, watching for, and being prepared for. And the final pattern I'll do for you with the autos forms, you have a case, or you have instances where you end up with the translation the same. Now, here's the difference. All of those examples I just gave you, autos had no article. So if it's just autos plus the word that it matches in gender, number, and case, autos and another word, they agree, they're both masculine, singular, nominative. Actually, nominative is the most common. If they're there together and they agree in gender, number, and case, but there is no article, translate it himself. The cases where you'll do the article are where you'll see the article, you're going to translate this as same. And let me show you some examples for that just to illustrate what this looks like. Here, do not the tax collectors, they are doing, and then I have article, the auta. Like what? Well, we'll talk later about the use of the neuter here, and it has the idea of things because it's neuter. But this auta is translated in the ESV as the same. It's because the article is here, the same. Okay, something coming down just a bit later here. Coming at that, here the ESV is translated very hour, that very hour. But what you're looking at is the word for hour. It even looks like hour a bit. And I've got here the pronoun right before it. And the way it's set up here is I've got it in conjunction with the article. Combined with the article, I'm going to come out with at that same hour, the same hour. Okay, go down here, and I've got Pilate, on that same day they became friends. I appeal to you, brothers, that all of you agree that you be united in the same mind and in the same judgment. You see the aute in here and the auto in here. By the way, they switch gender because of the nouns they're connected to. That you would be in the same love. The love, and this right here, connected into it, there's the article. Jesus Christ, yesterday and today, he is the same. Okay, so your key here is look for the article linked to or connected to that form of autos. And we'll translate that out as the same. And what we're doing in each one of these cases is we're recognizing a specific kind of emphasis that derives from the use of that pronoun. These latter two, the self and the same, those are connected to this form of autos. The other forms could be any of the pronouns when they're used as a subject and the subject's not necessary. Then we put that little bit of extra emphasis. Just keeping track of those different gradations of emphasis would give you a stronger sense of something that's happening. Okay, the last thing I need to do is introduce the relative pronouns. And the relative pronouns are going to be who, which, or that. So if I do something like, I eat the cheese that you gave me. Think about what's going on there grammatically. It's actually really fascinating what's happening here. I eat the cheese was already a sufficient sentence as it stood, right? I eat the cheese. I'll use which instead of that. I eat the cheese which you gave me. What I've just done there is the relative pronoun is the word which. And that relative pronoun has allowed me to actually attach two different sentences together as one. I eat the cheese, it's a complete sentence. You gave me cheese is a complete sentence. The which links them together. And some of the discussion of the intricacies of what's going on in the grammar, some of that has to await a future semester. We'll get more into that in second year. But I'll say for just a basic introduction right now, this which has created a relative clause. It's like a little sub-sentence. I called it a second sentence. Well, like a little mini sentence over here. And that little mini sentence is functioning as an adjective, or it's further explaining the cheese. I ate the cheese. I ate the good cheese. I ate the old cheese. I ate the expensive cheese. I ate the cheese which you gave me. It's functioning like an adjective. It's telling me more about the cheese. This cheese is the cheese that was a gift. So this entire clause, it's called a relative clause. This entire relative clause functions as an adjective. Because it is functioning as an adjective like this in Greek, the gender and the number are going to be taken from the cheese. If cheese is feminine, the gender here will be feminine. If it's cheese singular rather than cheese plural, like cheese is, then I'm going to make the which a singular. If it was cheeses, I would do plural. Gender and number will come from the antecedent, what it refers to over there. Okay, here's where it gets a little interesting. The case is going to be derived from the role of this word which, the relative pronoun, inside of this clause. And so in this case, it would actually be an accusative. You gave me what? You gave me which? You gave me the cheese. You gave me what? That's my direct object. And so this would be a direct object, and it would pull then accusative out of the role it has in this clause, while it would pull its gender and number from its antecedent, the word that it refers to earlier in the sentence. Whether you follow all the details of that, really okay. We will hit some of that. We'll explore some of those in a future semester. You'll get used to it, and I'm satisfied even if you don't have an immediate grasp of how that works right now. It's not at all a problem. What I do need you to have a grasp of right now is the pronoun chart. Now, based on what I just said, you would expect that you're going to need to know a masculine, a feminine, a neuter. You're also going to need to know it in all of the different forms as you proceed, singular, plural, nominative, genitive, dative, accusative. You've got to have them all. And the good news is, though that's a lot of forms to memorize, it's not hard to memorize because you roughly already have. Here's our chart. Look at the endings here and just recognize what's happening. I've got, run down it, os, u, o, on. What a relief. And over here I've got oi, on, ois, us. Total relief. Right here I've got a, ace, a, ain, I, on, ice, os. Perfect. A, u, o, a, on, ois, a. Perfect. Okay, a couple of qualifications to make here. Let's notice a few minor differences. One of the differences happens right here. It's a rather than on. The endings you actually learned there were on. This is just a. That's, if you remember the articles actually ended ta. Okay, that was the neuter article, ta, and then teknon. The ending was on, but the article was just ta. Okay, so it actually makes sense that I would only have a there. The other thing you need to know is as you look down these, don't miss the rough breathing mark. The rough breathing mark makes us say here, has, hu, ho, hon, hoi, hon, hois, hus. Hey, hey, say, hen, hi, hon, hi, has, ha, ho, hu, ho, ha, hon, hois, ha. It's actually a rough breathing mark throughout, not just the endings. Okay, that rough breathing mark will make all the difference. But once you get that rough breathing mark, because you already know the endings, you discover you're ready to go. You have relative pronouns already set. And just to show you what that looks like in implementation, let's run down the Greek New Testament a bit. I've chosen 1 John because that's where we're going to do a lot of our translations. I've highlighted the relative pronouns over here. First thing I would just observe as you scroll down it, there are a lot of them. That's worth recognizing, that you have a good number of relative pronouns, and knowing them now is going to make a difference for your ability to translate. If I translate, I'm going to start in verse 5 and just show you an example or two as we go. So verse 5, and this is the message which we have heard. Okay, now why the which here, or why the configuration here? It's feminine drawn from this. Angalia is feminine. It's singular because angalia is singular. But we have heard what? This is the message which we have heard. We have heard what? It's accusative because it's the direct object of the following phrase. It gets its case from the relative clause that follows. Down here, I have who. This de on. The on right here is going to give me an ever, and kind of a generalizer. And so I'll translate this, whoever should be keeping his word. Okay, and so the who is going to function as the subject. Whoever should keep. Subject of the verb should keep his word. Let's get one more example in here. Beloved, I'm not writing a new commandment, but an old commandment, which you are having, or which you had from the beginning. The old commandment is the word which you heard. Okay, this is really helpful. The commandment is feminine, and so it follows an old commandment which is also feminine. While down here, the old commandment is the word which you heard. This is masculine because it refers to logos, and it's masculine. Okay, so I have a difference of gender, feminine to masculine, because intele is feminine, logos is masculine, and the gender just follows. But this is an accusative because it's functioning as the direct object of you had. And this is also accusative because it's the direct object of you heard. It is to say again that the case is drawn from its use in the clause that follows, or the relative clause that it creates, while the gender and the number are drawn from the word it refers to earlier. Okay, and if you proceed down, if you looked at these other relative pronouns, you'll see genitives, masculines, feminines, accusatives. You see all kinds of different forms here. The ha form is just an important one. That's the one we've talked about here that's a bit of an exception. It's the neuter, singular, nominative, or the neuter, singular, accusative. That's the ha form, not han. And so long as you recognize some of those details, you'll be prepared to handle the relative pronouns. That's it for this lesson. It's a relatively easy lesson. It's a good opportunity to breathe a little and catch up. And it also puts you in a place now where you're just that much further ahead. Once you can use pronouns, well, now you can talk less like a mother to a child, and you have some richness in what's going to happen. And you've actually accounted for another vast swath of grammatical phenomena and words that are used across the New Testament. Good news is that you've managed to do it without having to learn any more charts. Great work. We'll continue on the next time with the future indicative verbs, adding another verb tense to our skill set.